Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 20 creepiest coincidences in history. And I mean, yeah, pretty self-explanatory. We're going to check this out. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. I don't really think I've done a video like this before, so it'll be fun to sort of see what things are in this. Maybe if I've heard of these or not. But yeah, links are in the description to my Instagram, my Twitter, if you want to follow me. Same for my Patreon if you want extra reactions that get blocked on YouTube. And let's just check this out.
In 1985, a bone-chilling pattern began to emerge in several reports of British house fires.
This ain't a British house, so...
When the smoke had cleared and the house, or what was left of it, laid charred and ashen, there was often one sole survivor, a creepy old painting of a crying boy. To get to the bottom of this spooky mystery, you're gonna have to stick around as I uncover 20 of history's creepiest coincidences.
Coincidence? I think not!
Rock and roll may have had... The 27 Club. Rock and roll may have had diverse beginnings, but some of the most successful and widely known rock stars of their era have one very disturbing thing in common. At just 27 years old, legends like Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, Amy Winehouse, and Jimi Hendrix all found themselves knocking on heaven's door. But what is it about this otherwise ordinary age that causes them to drop dead? While substance abuse played a predominant role in the cases of Winehouse, Morrison, and Hendrix, others, like Cobain, took their own lives. Ultimately, there's no definitive answer to these tragic ends, and the 27 Club link remains a mystery. However, research suggests it's not just the age of 27 that musicians should be wary of. Statisticians analyzed the lifespan of every musician who had a #1 hit on the UK album charts between 1956 and 2007.
Getting a #1 hit in the UK is leading to people being very sad, I guess. If that's what's the link, then goddamn, pray for us all. I don't think there's any coincidence. It's just what it is. I guess you could look at 30-year-olds and there'd be famous people who had something at 30. It's just a coincidence. I mean, it is coincidences, to be fair, so...
Overall, these musicians were 2 to 3 times more likely to die in their 20s and 30s than others of the same age. I've never felt so lucky to have no musical talent. But do you know what else they all had in common? Not one of them was subscribed to my channel. Now, I'm not saying there's a connection, but let's look at the facts, people. Oh, and don't forget to tickle that little ordinary stories. 11 years in the making. Do you believe in fate? After hearing the story of Mr. Ye and Miss Zhu, you'll find it hard not to. Back in 2011, these lovebirds met for the first time and fell in love in Chengdu, China. But 7 years later, in 2018, they were digging through old family photos when they found something that left them both speechless. It was this photo of Miss Zhu, which was taken back in 2000 at the May 4th Square in the seaside city of Qingdao. Miss Zhu's mother had taken the pretty photo of her against a large red sculpture, but little did she know she also captured her future husband in the image as well.
Oh shit, I just skipped forward. Oopsie. That's crazy.
Did she know she also captured her future
That is insane.
husband in the image as well? On that exact day, in the exact same moment, Mr. Ye was posing for his own photograph by the sculpture. 11 years later, they would fall in love in a totally different city over 16...
In China? I mean, in the same city, that's crazy. But they moved to a whole other city, and it's in China. Oh my god. That is insane. That's crazy. That is actually crazy.
1,500 kilometers away. Turns out, love knows no bounds, or odds for that matter. Dracula
That was a cool one. I
Down
like that a
Under.
lot.
Ancient tales about vampires have always revolved around the fanged freaks sucking their victims dry. But as the times have changed, it seems like one modern-day vampire has figured out that blood services can work as the vampiric equivalent of a 7-Eleven. Just take a look at the number plate of this car outside an Australian blood service center. It looks a little spooky, but if vampires were real, surely this would be like driving around with a big sign saying, "I eat people." Of course, this happened in Australia, where vampires are the least of your worries.
Yeah, to be fair, the animals there are next level.
Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul, was once the proud capital city of the Byzantine Empire. It stood gloriously for over 1,100 years with huge, unbreachable walls that reached 40 feet high and stretched a mile around the city's perimeter. But in 1453, the fortress city was impossibly conquered by the invading Ottoman Empire. It was such a powerful move that its repercussions marked the end of the Middle Ages. As startling as the historic takeover sounds, it was nothing in comparison to the prophecy that foretold its demise. Translated from a long-standing ancient Greek philosophy, it was predicted that Constantinople would always endure, provided that the moon in its full circle did not give a sign in the sky. And guess what? On May 22, 1453, a lunar eclipse partially blocked out the moon during the invasion. In fact, the moon had been central to Byzantine culture for over 1,123 years. So this must have felt like more than just a terrifying coincidence for those trapped behind the city walls.
Yeah, to be fair, especially in those days, it must have felt like everything was against you. And then boom, that's when it all changed.
1420 was not a great year for the Kingdom of France. Queen Isabeau had just signed the Treaty of Troyes, granting French succession to English royalty. It cost her a lot of popularity, so much so that a prophecy began circulating which read what had been lost by a woman would be saved by a woman, and that woman would turn out to be none other than Joan of Arc. This fate-fulfilling event took to the battlefield and led France to victory, reversing almost a century of French defeats from the English in just 1 year. As fictional as this may sound, it gets even stranger. Historians claim that the prophecy came from Merlin. Yes, that Merlin, the wizard from Arthurian legend. While it's debated whether or not this so-called wizard ever existed, his supposed prophecies were recorded in manuscripts around 1140. But before you start wondering what kind of magic mushrooms these historians have been growing on their books, archives show that the prophecy is repeatedly mentioned in Joan of Arc's trial. So, to summarize, by total coincidence, a made-up English magician is credited with prophesizing that all of France would be saved by a lady almost 300 years before it happened. Don't do drugs, kids.
Crazy,
do
actually.
history instead.
That's pretty wild how you can just have those random guesses, man. I say guess, maybe he just knew. Maybe they just knew, but still, it's pretty wild when it's in such a long time in the future and it's actually predicted. Pretty insane. Okay, this is one that's a lot more recent.
Seems like there are more conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy than there are tinfoil hats to go around. That said, there is one coincidence that can't be disputed, because it came from the lips of Kennedy himself. After arriving in Dallas on November 22, 1963, the Kennedys opened the Dallas Morning News to find this full-page anti-Kennedy advert. Bordered in black, it ominously resembled a funeral notice. It rattled the First Lady Jackie Kennedy so much that JFK tried to calm her down with what would later become a prophetic phrase. We're entering nut country today. But, Jackie, if someone wants to shoot me from the window with a rifle, nobody can stop it, so why worry about it?
Wow.
He didn't know how right he was. At 12:30 p.m., as the presidential car turned off the main street, the president took a bullet to the neck and head. He was driven straight to a nearby hospital, but as he had tragically foretold, there was nothing that could be done.
Kind of dark when you think about it. He just spoke it into existence.
Payphone phenomenon. From an American perspective, Brits are pretty weird. From their love of beans on toast to their love...
Don't knock it till you try it. I'll say it every time. I'll say it until I die, man. Beans on toast hits different, man.
...of affair with tea. But Britain is also home to one of the strangest coincidences in history. One day, back in 1992, AA repairman Jason Pegler was walking home from work in Dover. Suddenly, a payphone on the side of the road began ringing. He hesitantly answered the call, only to find his colleague Sue Hamilton on the other end. Without skipping a beat, she apologized for bothering him and asked if he knew how to work the office fax machine. Utterly baffled by the situation, Jason struggled to explain what had happened when Sue looked down and realized she hadn't rung his phone number. She'd rung his staff number. By incalculable luck, the number coincided with that of the payphone Jason was walking past.
What?
Although the story has turned up online throughout the years, there's no concrete proof that props up its legitimacy. It seems like, in some cases, these stories get told and retold until they become nothing but urban myths.
Yeah,
what do you make of the payphone coincidence?
Probably happened somewhere in the world, though.
If you have any spooky coincidence...
Everything's happened. Everything you can think of has happened at some point in time, so I'm sure it has happened at some point.
Diamond
Just randomly
disaster.
somewhere.
At 45.52 carats, the blue-tinged Hope diamond is about the size of a walnut, and its value is estimated at a bank-busting $250 million. But the number on the price tag isn't the only thing its previous owners have paid for it. It has a twisted history associated...
That's more than some countries sipping GDP. What? That is insane, man.
With the ruin and doom of its many owners, with some even claiming that it's cursed. Legend has it that after being unearthed in...
I tell you, it's not cursed. It's not cursed. But if that adds value to it, it's cursed.
India, it was stolen from a temple by a Hindu priest who was sentenced to a long and painful demise. It was then shipped to a French merchant who was mauled to death by a pack of wild dogs, but not before he sold the sadistic stone onto King Louis XIV of France. It remained in the royal family until the French Revolution saw its owners, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, brutally beheaded in 1790.
So what I'm hearing right now is it wasn't cursed, it was just in the hands of people who had a lot of power, and in these days you have a lot of power, you have a lot of eyes on you, you know?
3. By 1839, it was in the possession of Henry Philip Hope, from whom it gets its name. But the supposed curse claimed another victim, and he died that same year. It was passed down through his family to Lord Francis Hope, but his addiction to gambling and high spending forced him to sell the diamond on. Its next owner, Evelyn McLean, bought the stone for $180,000 in 1911 and claimed she didn't care about the rumors of bad luck the gem could bring. But over the years, the curse was credited for taking the lives of her son, daughter, and husband as well.
I mean, that's pretty wild, but what I find crazy is the fact that it's went through all this time. All these people are living and dying, so much history behind this little diamond.
Well, after her own death, the gem was sold to settle huge debts in her estate. Finally, in 1958, the Jeopardist gem was given to the Smithsonian Institute, ending the supposed curse for good. Who knew such terrible...
It was given to the Smithsonian Institute. Well, did they buy it, or was it just given to them for free? Plus, Smithsonian, I didn't know that was like an old thing. Obviously, I know it from the channel. I didn't know it was like an old organisation or institution.
Coincidences could look so pretty.
I thought it just arose from when the TV channel became a thing, but shows how much I know, for God's sake.
The curse of
Is it a
Bruce
TV channel?
Lee.
I think it is.
Aside from being one of the most... The curse of Bruce Lee. Aside from being one of the most badass humans alive, Bruce Lee was a martial arts instructor, director, actor, and all-round high-kicking legend. But at just 32 years old, Bruce suffered from a cerebral edema during the making of his final film, Game of Death, and died shortly after. What nobody knew at the time was that this fateful film would also link to the death of his son, Brandon Lee, just 20 years later.
Seen something
the
linked
film
to this
is
before.
famous among martial arts fans and contains a scene with a stuntman showing actors how to use prop guns.
Gentlemen, these are blanks. Only aim upward. There's a wad of paper that comes out and can injure someone.
Following in his father's footsteps, Brandon stepped into the world of acting and took a leading role in the film The Crow. Lee was struck by the fragment of a dummy bullet that had been lodged in the barrel. As the blank was fired, it propelled the real bullet into his side. The wound was fatal, but it could have been avoided if they'd followed the advice in his father's final film. Even in death, you should always listen to your parents.
I knew that they both passed away. I knew there was a weird link. I didn't know it was like that. That's just dark as hell, man. God damn.
Pharaoh fallacy. The mummies that haunt Hollywood movie screens tend to have two things. unbelievable riches, and a deadly curse that befalls all treasure hunters. But Hollywood didn't invent the concept of the mummy's curse, bad press did. In 1922, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun was discovered in the Valley of Kings in Luxor, Egypt. Journalists reported that there was a curse engraved on the tomb, which ominously read, "Death shall come of swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." However, the expedition's archaeologist Howard Carter quickly dismissed the claim as a pack of lies. Even so, within just 10 years, 6 people involved in the expedition met a gruesome end through poisoning, murder, suicide, and even assassination.
Holy
The
shit.
hideously coincidental deaths have only fed the fatal fiction of the mummy's curse. And as unbelievable as it may sound, it seems destined to never die. Moped mishap. On July 18, 1975, tragedy in the form of a taxi struck 17-year-old Erskine Eben as he was riding his moped down a road in Hamilton, Bermuda.
A wild recording.
The impact sadly killed
Wait, where? I'm gonna guess where the location. Not Bermuda. Montserrat.
his moped down a road in Hamilton, Bermuda.
Oh, it's Bermuda.
The impact sadly killed the young man, but some spooky circumstances came to light shortly after the accident. Almost exactly a year before, Erskine's brother Neville had been riding down the same
Don't say it
road
was the
on the
same way.
same moped when he too was struck and killed
Imagine being the parents of these kids. Imagine the pain.
by a car. But not just any car. Both brothers had collided with the very same taxi, driven by the same man.
Maybe this man shouldn't be driving
And
anymore.
according to the boy's father, it was even carrying the very same passenger.
Okay, that's weird. That's very weird. I don't like this one at all. This is just scaring me.
You're probably thinking that this has to be made up, because the odds of this scenario repeating itself seem impossible at best. Well, seeing as the little island of Bermuda only had a small population of about 12,000 back then, the improbability of such an event happening isn't as big as you might think. But to add a cherry to the top of this incredibly coincidence-filled treat, the boys were also both 17.
Oh my
Is this
God.
just coincidence or a glitch in the Matrix?
That's just looking sad, man.
Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Next to the dictionary definition of luck, they should place the image of this man. His name is Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and he might just be the luckiest man to ever walk the earth. On August 6, 1945, Yamaguchi was on a business trip to Hiroshima. Does that date and place sound familiar? If you've ever paid attention in history class,
It does.
then you'll know that's
It
when
does.
and where America dropped the first atom bomb on Japan. It killed between 60,000 and 80,000 people in the blink of an eye. But Yamaguchi miraculously survived. He wasn't unscathed, though. His upper body was badly burned from the intensity of the blast, yet he managed to return home a few days later. But his home was in Nagasaki. I can almost hear the history
Oh, I
buffs
have
holding-
seen this one. I thought I recognised his name. I have seen. He went here, and then obviously you know what happened here
in
as
their
well.
breath. On August 9th, just 3 days after Hiroshima,
You cannot write
America
this.
dropped another atomic bomb on Japan. Can you take a guess where? That's right, the city of Nagasaki. It wiped a further 40,000 people off
And
the
he
face of
survived,
the earth
right?
instantly. But despite the odds, Yamaguchi survived once again. He's one of the only people to have ever survived 2 atomic bomb blasts and lived to tell the hideously
It's
coincidental
insane.
tale.
It's insane.
Clover quirk. The odds of you finding a 4-leaf clover are approximately 1 in 10,000. So what do you think the odds are of finding one when you can't even see? As impossible as it sounds, Reddit user Uncle
I
Dudes
remember. Was it my mum or my grandma? One of the two. They were like asking me and my brother to look for 4-leaf clovers, and if we found one, we'd get like £1. And they had like a big. Yeah, it must be my grandparents. They had a big garden. So we were looking all over the floor for 4-leaf clovers, and £1 back when I'm like probably 8-year-old, 7-year-old, maybe 9, I don't know, around that age. Yeah, that's like $1 million, you know. You're getting £1. You can spend £1 at the sweet shop. You're like living good. And I was looking for hours, or maybe not hours, just looking for a bit of time. I just eventually just got one and just ripped it. And obviously I'm like so young at that point, I think it's obvious. They're not going to notice this, are they? Not it's obvious. They're not going to notice this, are they? I've just ripped it a little bit, I made it look good. They saw it, and to be fair, I got the pound, but they must have been like, you little liar, you little dimwit liar.
Its blind son.
That's my life for you.
Shows that the odds were definitely in his.
Wait, my blind son? Give him £10, man, not £1. Did I say dollar? If I said dollar, I am very done out. I meant pound. But give this kid £10, man. If I get £1, he deserves at least 10.
His favor. He was born with bilateral micropathology.
Oh, he's literally not got any pupils. I don't think.
Ophthalmia, a condition that affects the development of the eyes. About 3% of America's 74.1 million children suffer some form of blindness. And that means the odds of a blind child finding a four-leaf clover in America is roughly 1 in 247 billion.
That's the weirdest one I've ever seen.
That's what you call blind luck. Jefferson and Adams. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were both involved in drafting one of the most important documents in American history, the Declaration of Independence. These two founding fathers were some of the most prominent statesmen of America's revolutionary generation. By signing the Declaration on July 4th, 1776, they announced the separation of 13 North American British colonies from Great Britain, and the US of A was born. But exactly 50 years after the Declaration was signed, on July 4th, 1826, Adams passed away. The final words he ever uttered were, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." But he was wrong. Just 5 hours earlier, Jefferson had also passed away. As well as being an incredible coincidence, these might just be the most patriotic deaths in history.
That is insane.
A
You can't write that sort of
puzzle.
stuff.
Of the 45 presidents that have led the United States up till now, can you take a guess at how many have had brown eyes? Seeing as approximately 45% of Americans have brown eyes, you'd expect it to be something like 20 or even 15 at least, right? In fact, only 6 presidents have taken baby browns into the Oval Office. As strange as it sounds, about 70%
I didn't even recognise Trump had blue eyes. This looks edited. Does he actually have blue eyes?
of them have had blue eyes.
I've never looked at it. I don't really look at people's eyes. That's probably what I don't realise. I don't have in my head, oh, Trump's got blue eyes. Obama's got brown eyes. I don't know, I just don't picture that, man. I don't think about it.
And as far as an explanation goes, psychological experiments indicate that we actually perceive brown-eyed people to be more trustworthy than their blue-eyed counterparts. But it's not the only unbelievable presidential coincidence. 8 of all the presidents have also been left-handed. But since the end of World War II, almost half of the 13 US presidents have been left-handed. Despite statistics
when you realise how low percentage of people are actually left-handed, that's pretty insane.
showing that just 10% of the American population are lefty-led. In 2019, scientists from Oxford University found a genetic link to left-handedness.
I still on left-handedness. I have a sort of thought that people who are left-handed are just better at things. Whether it's sports or just being smart, just if you can be left-handed, you are just gonna be better at anything. Or left-footed, like left-footed footballers are like they just always seem to be like just crisper on the ball. That's not the term I'm looking for. Just that, I don't know. It's just something about being left-footed or left-handed. It just adds something, you know, bit of culture to you.
That may gift lefties with better verbal skills as a result. That's a pretty important presidential skill. Though I wonder what the studies say about tiny hands.
What the fuck is
Motor
that?
miracle. I think it's safe to say that the owner of this car might just be the luckiest driver in the world. During the terrifying conditions of Hurricane Duan back in 2016, parts of Taiwan were at the mercy of horrifically high winds reaching 135 miles per hour. They were so powerful that they managed to uproot this huge tree. But thankfully, the bend at its top meant that even when it fell, it avoided crushing the car parked underneath it. Now,
you cannot
that
write
puts
it, man.
the car in good karma.
It's so lucky, man, honestly.
Perpetual Putin. Vladimir Putin is many things. An avid outdoorsman, a martial arts fan, a motorcycle fanatic, and he manages to fit all of this in between running a country and hacking into countless others. Where does he find the time? Well, it turns out he might just be immortal. Pictures from Russian soldiers from 1920 and 1941 have surfaced looking surprisingly like the leader of Mother Russia.
I know these pictures are always like, there's so many people that have lived on this planet, so obviously you're going to have lookalikes just like you, but that is so weird how these both look like exactly like him, especially this one. What the
photos
fuck?
Definitely bear an uncanny resemblance to the Russian ruler, and they're not the only shreds of evidence of his so-called immortality. Just take a look at this painting of 19th century Greek general Thanassilos Valentinos. Look familiar? And what about this from 15th century Dutch painter?
I think it's just there's a lot of people on this planet. This is one scary looking individual.
John von Eyck. That resemblance is ghost-like, although that might just be the skin tone. So either Putin just has one of those faces, or he's an immortal miscreant who's been popping up over the centuries. Which do you think it is?
I think I know what it is,
Assassination
to be honest.
Accident. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand didn't just trigger a war, it was also bizarrely linked to its end. Heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, the Archduke was visiting Bosnia to oversee military exercises when his car was attacked by Serbian nationalists. 7 of these young men had bombs strapped to their bodies and loaded revolvers, but their extensive plan of attack failed and the Archduke got away safely.
It's so funny how that happened. He got away, and then when he's just driving around, that's when they found him again.
Couldn't be avoided. The driver took a wrong turn and placed them in the path of Gavrilo Princip, another Serbian nationalist, who had been waiting on the wrong road after popping out to grab a sandwich for lunch. The misplaced assassin realized his unbelievable fortune and fired 2 perfectly lethal shots, killing the Archduke and pushing the continent into the First World War. But unbeknownst at the time, there was hope hidden on the number plate of the car. As you can see, it reads A111118. When written as a date, 11/11.
Why are these ones different to these ones?
11/18, it refers to Armistice Day, the day the war officially ended.
I mean, I don't think these are actually ones, but even then, you can sort of consider they are. That's pretty wicked, to be honest. How that just obviously it's just a coincidence, but that's a crazy coincidence.
Not sure if this counts as an amazing or terrifying twist of fate. What do you think? Crying curse. The 1980s was characterized by plenty of questionable aesthetics, but one of the lesser-known fashionable faux pas of the era was the crying boy portrait. Originally painted by Giovanni Bragolin, these portraits of dejected-looking urchins were mass-printed and widely available from the 1950s to the 1970s. But in September 1985, British tabloid The Sun began reporting on a creepy coincidence that swept
We don't talk about that tabloid. Not around here, man.
The nation. House fires that reduced many homes to ashes had only one survivor: the crying boy paintings. Amidst the ashes, it was reported that the portraits were completely unscathed. Some weren't even blackened by the smoke. This led to widespread speculation that the paintings were jinxed and actually caused the fires, even though most had normal causes, like cigarettes and deep-fat fryers. But the coincidence whipped the public up into a frenzy, and many people sent their own cursed prints off to be destroyed in mass bonfires. After the air was cleared of the ensuing hysteria, comedic investigator Steve Punt took a more scientific approach to the coincidental curse. In an experiment, he tried to burn one of the printed paintings and concluded that the prints actually used a varnish that contained a fire retardant. He also theorized that in many cases, the string holding the painting up had been burned first, dropping it face down and protecting it from most of the fire damage. As obvious as it may sound, I doubt The Sun thought totally rational explanation behind creepy painting coincidence was a headline that would sell many copies.
Oh yeah, of course not. Again, this tabloid is not very popular here, so yeah, fair enough. You gotta get your clicks right. Well, I say clicks, that's not how it was back then. Chris Benoit, this is not what I was expecting to see. Oh, okay. What's gonna happen here? Because this man is this man was a very affected individual. Oh God.
The Benoit Blunder. Chris Benoit was one of the most recognizable faces in the world of wrestling, but in 2007 he ended his own life, as well as those of his wife and son at his home in Lafayette, Georgia. The shocking event shook the sporting world to its core, but something even creepier was about to drop jaws even further. 14 hours before the bodies were discovered, Benoit's Wikipedia page was updated to say he'd been having difficulties stemming from the death of his wife Nancy. The edit was made from this anonymous IP address in Stamford, Connecticut.
Before it was
Worryingly,
announced.
that was the same city where Benoit's employers, the WWE, had their headquarters. The edit was reversed just under 20 minutes later, as no reliable source for the information was provided.
What?
But when the bodies were eventually discovered, the terrifying coincidence couldn't be ignored. Had someone known what Benoit was planning to do? Or had he been set up to take the blame for this seriously heinous crime? A few hours later, the anonymous wiki user posted an apology on the Wikinews site, insisting it was all a terrible coincidence.
What the
They'd heard
hell?
rumors related to a family emergency of Benoit's and had jumped to the most disturbing conclusion. And with that, we should all remember never to blindly trust Wikipedia again. Which of these
I
coincidences...
feel like I want to do a reaction to that Chris Benoit case because I've never really looked into it. Obviously, I know what's happened, but like to do with like brain damage and stuff. But I feel like if there is a video out there, I could do a reaction to it if people would be interested. But yeah, 20 creepiest coincidences in history. Some of these definitely are just not coincidences and just things that have happened. Probably half of these are made up, but some of these were pretty interesting. And I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it. Hopefully you did as well. If you want more of this stuff, let me know in the comments. And yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.